Hello and welcome to the Deep Dive with the Rhode Island Coalition for Israel. I'm your host, Maria Friedman, Executive Director of Rhode Island Coalition for Israel, or RICI for short. This podcast is produced on the Ocean State Current and is a bold exploration of the issues shaping Israel, America, Rhode Island, and the future of Western civilization. Our podcast showcases our unique grassroots partnership between Jews and Christians who are actively working to combat anti-Semitism or Jew hatred in Rhode Island through education and advocacy. From community voices to national thought leaders, our program amplifies perspectives often overlooked. I'm so privileged today to welcome our first guest, Pastor Allen Pangburn from Christians United for Israel and Praise Tabernacle.
It was great to be here, Maria. And we have been together quite a few times in our Nights to Honor Israel and different events that are going on. And I am not actually from Rhode Island, but they let me live here. I've been living here for 26 years. I'm from Canada, and I grew up with a passion to play hockey. Played hockey from age 5 to 19. Only problem was they never drafted me to the NHL. My dad was a pastor, and so I grew up in a pastor's home. I went to college in Maine. I've been married to be 42 years this summer. I have a son and a daughter. My daughter lives in Maine. My son is here. He works with me. And I have 5 grandchildren. And I've been pastoring here at Praise Tabernacle for 26 years.
Wow, that's amazing. Can you tell us a little bit more about Praise Tabernacle and also what called you to be a pastor and to get involved with Christians United for Israel?
What called me to be a pastor? Well, I grew up in a pastor's home, as I mentioned. So my dad was a pastor, so that was always there. Um, but that was never on my radar growing up to be a pastor. But then when I went to college, I kind of changed things around a little bit and just felt my call to pastoring, and I've been doing it now for almost 42 years. So it is a passion of mine as well. As far as Israel goes, my dad was a major uh, he was staunch for Israel, I should say. And my dad was very strict, and he was strict in the way that you would treat people. And I remember he would never allow a joke to be told if it had any slant towards a Jewish person at all. He would just rebuke me on the spot. And he always told me when he would point to the map when I was just a little boy and say, that part of the world right there, that is where God has his hand on Israel and the Jewish people. So it was always brought up in my life. But as far as studying the Word of God goes, I realized in just reading the Bible how important Israel is. So when it came the opportunity to be involved with Christians United for Israel, it was just a no-brainer for me. And we stand however we can for the nation of Israel and the people of Israel.
That's wonderful. And for those who aren't familiar with Christians United for Israel, or CUFI as we say it for short, what is the organization? What does it do? And can you tell us more about your role also as Ministry Engagement State Coordinator?
Christians United for Israel is just basically an organization that stands for and with Israel. It's an organization that was started by John Hagee out of San Antonio, Texas, back in, I believe it was 2008. And there's a little over 10 million members now that are involved, and it's a grassroots organization. I have been involved since 2014. Then in 2015, I became the state director, and just last year, I became the ministry engagement coordinator for the state of Rhode Island. And so I work with pastors, as many as I possibly can. I don't care who they are or what they are. I just would like to educate them on Israel. And then we also, I will teach a course called Israel Is to explain to people about Israel, and schools, churches, Nights to Honor Israel, men's meetings, women's meetings, whatever, just to get the word out there. Also, I enlist pastors to go to Poland and Israel trips that we go on. I'm going on one next month, and 4 pastors from Rhode Island are going. We take them to Poland first so they can see the Holocaust and what they all went through in Krakow and also in Auschwitz and Birkenau. And then we go from there to Israel to show how that they have flourished and how the country has flourished, and so they can get a better picture of it. So they're not just hearing the rhetoric that goes on in the news and the false news that's going on. They can see it firsthand and be there and speak to even people. We even go into the Knesset and speak to people in the Knesset, IDF soldiers, whether it's the northern border, we'd be down to Sderot, which is down on the Gaza border, so they can literally see what's going on. And they come back with a whole different perspective once that is. And so that helps us not just to reach pastors, but then they reach their congregations and have Nights to Honor Israel. And so we're just working towards that end.
That's a remarkable opportunity for these pastors. I would love
Yes.
to hear about their experience too when they come back, because I
Mhm.
know I was personally changed the first time that I went to Israel as well. So just in general, like why should Christians support Israel? And feel free to mention any specific Bible verses that relate to this.
Well, Israel is one of the main topics of the Bible. I mean, it's just all through the Word of God. And the scripture says, because you mentioned about any scriptures I want to mention, Psalms 122:6 says, pray for the peace of Jerusalem. May they prosper who love you, peace within your walls, prosperity within your palaces. For the sake of my brethren and companions, I will now say, peace within you. So we just believe in the Word of God. We believe in scripture. And so therefore, we believe that the mandate we have is to stand with Israel. The Bible says in the very first book of the Bible, Genesis 1:1, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. I believe that. We believe that. Therefore, if God's the creator of the heavens and the earth, he can do with the earth what he wills. It was not the United Nations that drew the borders for Israel. It was not America or Britain or any other country. It wasn't even Rome. It was God that drew the borders for Israel. And that was 4,000 years ago when he called Abraham to a land that Abraham didn't even realize where he was going to. And he said, I will give it to you and to your descendants forever. It also says in Genesis 17, he promised Abraham it would be an everlasting covenant. And I don't really wrap my mind around everlasting or eternal because I'm a human being who is mortal, but I realize that is forever and it's theirs. Then we look at it for our part as a Christian. We feel that we have been grafted in to the promise that Abraham had, but we did not take over. The Bible, we go to the New Testament in Romans chapter 11, which is totally against any replacement theology that people are trying to propagate today. If they read Romans 11, they will know that that's not true at all. But it does say there that if some of the branches were broken off, that you, being a wild olive, have been grafted in. But it also says at the end of that chapter verse, it says, you do not support the root, but the root supports you. So we look at it that we're supported by Israel. I like what John Hagee says, and this is a quote from John Hagee. John Hagee says, Jewish people do not need Christianity to explain their existence, but we cannot explain our existence without them. And that's the bottom line. And so I just really believe that we have to stand together, and that's why we are such staunch believers in Israel. Their right to exist, the right to their land, and the right to defend themselves.
That's beautiful, Pastor Allen. And what you just said right there is the definition of Zionism, right? Just believing that
Exactly.
Israel has the right to
Yes.
exist and the Jews have a right to their ancestral indigenous homeland in Israel, which was, in your opinion, created by God, not created by some country. That
Right.
is so beautiful. I also want to highlight, I know we've talked about this verse a lot, but Genesis 12, that also says those who bless Israel will be blessed
Exactly.
and those who curse it will be cursed. I think that's a really important thing for Christians to keep in mind as
Exactly. And
well.
it says in that verse as well, it continues on, says, and through Israel, all nations of the world will be blessed. You can just look at the technology that's in our world today that comes from Israel, and all down through the ages that we've been blessed through the Jewish people. And that has to be a God thing. There's no other explanation to it.
Right. Yeah, I think I've seen a statistic that like Jewish people have the highest per capita percentage of Nobel Peace Prize invention prizes, which is incredible. So such a tiny country that is blessing the whole world with incredible technologies and inventions. So I know you just highlighted some of the reasons why Christians support Israel, but what do you think is getting in the way of Christians supporting Israel, and how can we overcome some of those obstacles?
Well, anti-Semitism is really being pushed today, very subtly, actually. Like I'll watch the news sometimes, and I'll look at it, and all of a sudden, I say, you know what? They're coming at the Jews, and they're not even saying it, but yet they are in a roundabout way. And so it's anti-Semitism, and then you have false narrative on social media. It's just it boggles my mind. You got must have some kid in the basement doing up some of these YouTube videos, and they're totally false. But the more they propagate that, it gets out that people just take whatever they hear on YouTube and they say, "Oh, that must be fact," and they don't know the facts of what's going on at all, and but they believe it. And there's so much power in social media today, especially with our young people. Then in Christian circles, you have what's called replacement theology, which some Christian, it's not a huge amount of people, but it can gain steam that believe that the church or the Gentiles that receive Christ or whatever in the New Testament have replaced Israel. Well, that's not true at all. Romans 11, which I mentioned, absolutely says Paul said that's not true at all, and that is a very dangerous thing that's going on in our world being propagated. If you in history, you'll find that in Germany, the church has propagated replacement theology, and that's what gave Hitler his steam. He rolled with that replacement theology that a lot of the, whether Lutherans, whoever it was, that believed at that time. And that gave him a lot of his steam for his, Mein Kampf and the final solution. And a lot of Christians don't realize that it comes from that replacement theology. What came from it? Holocaust. And so it is a dangerous thing, but it is out there. Um, how can we overcome that? We have to educate ourselves. A lot of people just don't read. They'll read something. They'll read the highlight line, and that's it. But they won't do any study into it. And you can't believe everything that you hear, especially can't believe everything you see on social media. You got to know the facts. And a lot of people, Maria, you know this, they don't even know where the term Palestine comes from. They don't. You ask them, they have no idea. And that it came from the Romans, and it was an insult because of the revolt that went on. It was Syria, Palestine, and they gave that area to try to just diminish the Jewish presence there and the Jewish mentality there, kick them out of their land. So people don't know just even simple facts. And then you need to read the Bible, as you and I just mentioned a couple of verses, and it's an everlasting covenant with Israel. You need to read some books, know your history. There's a great book. I don't know if you read it. It's called The Stones Speak by, what's the gentleman? Dorn Spielman. Excellent book. And it was just published in 2025. And it's about the city of David and the new road that's going up from the Pool of Siloam all the way up to the walls of Jerusalem. It's an incredible book how the stones have literally spoken and all that they've tried to discredit Israel and the Jewish ownership of that land. It's coming out in coins, it's coming out in rocks, and the more that they dig, and they don't want them to dig there, but the more they dig, it's just saying, okay, Israel's been here for 2,000, 3,000 years, and it's just coming to fruition through this. It's a great book, but they have to educate themselves.
Yeah, you're so right. And that trend, just reading the headlines and not looking beyond, is so pervasive. Like, I remember just throughout this war in Gaza, right? There'd be headlines like Israel, bombs like hospital in Gaza, right? But they're not looking at the context, right? They're not looking at these Hamas terrorists and militant fighters that are hiding themselves and their supplies like underneath the floorboards in hospitals, right? And
Exactly.
so they just read the headline and they start to think that Israel is the enemy. So I think you're spot on that we do need to educate people both about the history and about, the current context of what's happening. So on that note, I want to know, as as a pastor and also in your role as Kufi state engagement coordinator. Have you gotten any pushback from maybe your own congregants or other folks in the Christian community saying, hey, Pastor, like, why are you talking about Israel or why do you support Israel? I've heard such and such in the media. How do you have those conversations with people?
I had about 3 months ago, because I always promote Israel in our church all the time. And we have the Israeli flag on our platform, and they know that I'm a member. I have a mezuzah on my office door. I mean, you can't come around here and not know that we are a staunch supporter of Israel. So I had a guy go out by and about 3 months ago, maybe 4 months ago, and he says to me at the door, because I shake hands when everybody's leaving. He said, I don't know about Israel. He said, they're doing a lot of bad things down there. And I said, listen, I said, be careful what you read and what you look at on the news. Make sure you know the facts. And that spoke to me when he said that. And I decided I'm going to do a series on why we support Israel. I did a 4-week series on that. And I actually did a lot of the Israel is course, and how it's biblical, and to let our people know, because we have new people coming all the time that maybe haven't heard in the past. So we did a 4-week series on that, on Israel, to educate our people so they will know. Then the last night, which was 2 weeks ago, no, a week ago last night, we had Rabbi Jonathan Hausman come and sit in on a discussion panel with myself and Pastor Dave and my son, and to get his perspective from the Jewish community about Israel and Christians and standing together and so on and so forth. So it's all education. I do get a little pushback every once in a while. When I do, I always say, okay, we're going to do a series on this. And then I teach it again, and then they understand the history, the biblical point of view, the facts of what's going on. The most moral army in the world is the IDF. I love America. I love the United States of America, but our army would never do, our military would never do what Israel does, as warning people, dropping leaflets, knock bombs, all kinds of things like that. We're not the moral army that Israel is. They're the most moral army in the world, and people don't realize it.
Yes, that is so true. And people don't know the links that the IDF will go to, for
Right.
example, to alert people, to evacuate ahead of time. They'll leaflet thousands of flyers and send text messages and phone calls telling people to evacuate and leave. And they tell them where to go to, what route to take.
Yep.
Now it's up to people if they want to heed those warnings or ignore it. But I love that you're like hitting this on the head spot on with education and having nuanced conversations with your congregants. That's absolutely incredible. And that's
Right.
one of the reasons why Ricky loves partnering with Praise Tab, because you guys do this critical education from, a Christian lens to appeal, of
Right.
course, to your audience. So on that note, can you tell us about these annual nights to honor Israel that you hold at Praise Tab, and Ricky has been grateful to be a part of those and be a partner
Right.
over the years on those events. What are they like? What's the purpose of them? Why do you do them?
Well, we do them. First of all, when I started, I didn't know how I was going to be able to do this, to be a state director, because because I'm from Canada, and I was in Canada for a pastor there for 11 years in Canada, 4 years in Maine, and I've been here now 26 years pastoring here at Praise Tabernacle. But when they approached me at first, I really didn't have any connection with the Jewish community. And I said to the gentleman that asked me if I would take on this responsibility, I said, I have no connection. So, long story short, I started to have different people from the Jewish community just all of a sudden start coming to us. And I said, okay, we can do this. And so every year we have a night to honor Israel, where we usually bring a keynote speaker in. 2 years ago, we had, 3 years ago, I think it was, we had one of the October 7th hostage brother-in-law come from Omri Miran came, and thank God he's been released and he's alive. We had him come. We have politicians come. We have IDF soldiers have come. And the real goal of that is to bring Jews and Christians together. Yes, it's education for the Christian community, but we have to work together in this. We need one another, because we're the Sunday crowd and the Saturday crowd. And what do they yell? Well, after we come after the Saturday crowd, we're coming after the Sunday crowd. And we are joined together from the Bible, from the Torah, from the Old Testament. We are there, there's a joining there to us. And if there's ever a time that we need one another, it's now. So that's why we do the Night to Honor Israel.
That's amazing. And I've probably gone for 3 or 4 years now. I've been blown away every time. It's also beautiful, as you said, to bring the Christian and Jewish community together. It's not often that we sit together in the same room,
Right. Right.
listening to music together, listening to speakers that are both Christian and Jewish. It's very powerful for us to stand together. And I appreciate the efforts that your church has made to make the local Jewish community feel welcome at this event. So my next question, you kind of just answered it, but if you have anything else to add, how can the Christian and Jewish communities work together to combat anti-Semitism?
Well, there has been over the years, there's been a certain amount of walls that have been up there between Jews and Christians, which I understand that. There has been a lack of trust. And I would say if anybody had the right to not trust someone, the Jews not to trust Christians, because just look at history. Uh, I can't do anything about that. History is history, but and I don't feel that um, we shouldn't hold other people down because of what our predecessors did in history. We have to learn from it and move on. I believe that when we come together and work together, there's power in numbers. There's no doubt about that. And we need those numbers to speak to our government officials. As far as Christians go, a lot of Christians will promote and talk about Martin Luther, just to, he's like kind of the elephant in the room always. And his writings were, they leaned anti-Semitic, no doubt about it. Hitler used some of his writings in Mein Kampf. So that's a blight on the Christian community. I'm not saying that he was an evil man. I don't know him, didn't know him. He was a long time before me, but that is there. And I recognize that. When a Jewish person comes into a Christian church, they'll see a cross. Cross has a whole different meaning to a Jewish person than it does a Christian. I explain that to our people. I said, when you look at that cross, you look at it from the Christian's perspective. Jews don't look at it that way. And we have a huge cross that's at the very back of our church, big old wooden cross. And we take that down when we do a night to honor Israel. Not in any way that Christians to think, oh, you're ashamed of the cross. No, I'm not ashamed of the cross. And I'm not taking it down for any other reason. The fact that I just want us, let's come together. And I don't want there to be something that's here like an Orthodox rabbi would not come. Most of them won't come to a Christian church. I understand that. We did have one come a few years ago, and that's when we started taking the cross down. And I explained to our congregation why we're going to do that. And so we can have that night of fellowship to work together for Israel and the people of Israel and the land of Israel. So, I believe that God honors unity. In Ecclesiastes, it talks about two are better than one, and a three-fold cord cannot easily be broken. And we need one another. When you have one voice, it really doesn't mean much. But when you have hundreds, thousands, or millions of voices, that's when you get heard. So if we just break ourselves off into our little places, not much is heard. I'm not a real protest fan. I feel that protests many times, if something bad can go down, it can go down at a protest. And you were here for a night to honor Israel. We had some people that were across the street, and they were chanting from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free and all that stuff, which just means eliminate the Jews. That's all they're saying. But I just told our people, ignore them. Don't even wave at them. Don't do anything because I don't know who they were. I don't know what their names were. So they were irrelevant. What is powerful is when we come together in numbers and we go like to Washington to the summit, which you've been there before, and we go with a great number of people from Rhode Island, paid their own way, been there and go to the senator's office, the congressman's office and say, here we are. That gets their attention more than anything. And I think that's one of the powerful things. If we can come together and they said, well, listen, this wasn't just Christians. This was Jews that came in my office. And so we've got, if we've got, 20 people here in our office, that represents how many thousands back in Rhode Island. So uh, that's powerful, but we need to work together with one another. And I try to do my best, Maria, to not put any walls up or be offensive in any way, especially for that night to honor Israel. I believe what I believe. If you were to talk to me, I believe what I believe from the Bible. But as far as Israel goes, I want to do the best to stand with Israel, and I can't do that if we can't be unified for Israel and their right to defend themselves, and so on and so forth.
Right, that's exactly right, Pastor Allen. And, that's exactly what we're trying to do here at Rhode Island Coalition for Israel as well, is
Right.
work together, Jews and Christians, because we are stronger together. We shouldn't be siloed. We should be having, conversations, educating our communities. I also want to highlight a couple years ago in 2024, there was a BDS ordinance, which is a divestment ordinance, calling on the city of Providence to divest from any bonds with Israel or not do business with Israel. It was very symbolic because the city did not have any bonds with Israel at the time that legislation was introduced. But we did partner with your church and we were able to collect like thousands of
Yeah.
signatures from the Christian community showing that we were in opposition of that ordinance because we know that this divestment or BDS movement is trying to destroy Israel economically.
Right.
That is one way to try and attack a country. And so we really appreciate, that our Christian brothers and sisters were there and were willing to sign their name, showing that they don't stand for this. There was
Right.
also some anti-Semitic language in that ordinance, but that's an example of at a local level how we can come together. And then you
Right.
also just mentioned CUFI. I had the privilege of going this summer in July, and so I was there also, on Capitol Hill talking to our Rhode Island delegates, our Congress people and senators, and I agree, it's powerful to
It
talk to
is.
them. And when we come together, then we're representing thousands, hundreds of thousands, maybe, of people in Rhode Island. I don't know how many people identify as Christian in Rhode Island, but we're representing that group, and we
Sure.
have to
And
we have
even at the summit a few years ago, when we went to the Hill, it was for the Taylor Force Act was being presented, and for pay to slay bill, and so that we went into our senators and Congress, and that passed hugely, and I believe a lot of that had to do with Christians and Jews coming together and going to Washington and taking their stand. And that's now today we have the Taylor Force Act, which is huge,
Yeah,
and
can
and,
you
and
can
many
you
things like
explain
that.
more about what it is in case someone's not familiar?
Well, what was happening is the Palestinians, and I hate to say Palestinian, but the Hamas, they were paying people if they would kill somebody that was Jewish, just a single terrorist act. That person would go to prison, but their family would be paid monthly because they did that act of terrorism. So they were actually paying that person to slay Jews. And Taylor Force was over there, a young man, and he was killed that way. And because he was killed, and then the person, I can't remember the person's name that took his life from Hamas or the terrorists, who it was, but they were being paid. His family was being paid monthly because he carried out that heinous act. And so what came up is that the United States of America it no longer is going to support anything that would give monies to Hamas or whatever the organization would be there that would use that money to sponsor terrorists that would kill Jewish people.
Yeah, it's
In a
absolutely
nutshell.
atrocious. Yeah, absolutely atrocious. And then that's amazing that that bill was able to be passed. And I know that there's an organization called Sharat Hadin Israel Law Center that we've also collaborated with before that is actively working in different countries to
Right.
pass similar laws so that that can be outlawed, the pay to slay. And I
Yep.
encourage people to Google that and look up more information.
Absolutely.
So Judeo-Christian values, that's part of RICI's core mission is to promote Judeo-Christian values. So
Right.
what do those mean to you, and how can we promote that in Rhode Island?
Well, I feel that America, well, I don't feel like America was established on Judeo-Christian values. I mean, when they put our laws together in this country, they use the Ten Commandments. Where do they come from? They come from the Hebrew Scripture, and so that's where they use the Jewish Torah, and then also from what we have in the New Testament that they were Christians that were our founding fathers. So Judaism and Christianity connect us as a whole, and I just look at it as it's the central text for both religions. It is. And we both use the Old Testament. So our core values are there. Justice, of course, human dignity, love for one's neighbor, care for the stranger. Where does that come? That comes from Hebrew scripture, which we as Christians believe with all of our heart. So it is the social framework for Western society. If we get away from that, you're removing the foundation. Because that's our foundation. You remove a foundation of a building, what happens to the building? The building collapses. And if we remove the Judeo-Christian foundation, this nation is headed for collapse. But I don't believe it is. I believe that we still have a great remnant. But that's in a nutshell what it is.
Right. No, I agree. It's those basic 10 commandments that we have not mastered yet in society, like being nice to your neighbor, right?
Yeah.
Not killing people, not committing adultery, honoring your parents. These are all things that are outlined in these 10 commandments that Jews and Christians share. And I agree that that is the
It's like
bedrock.
even the religious leader came to Jesus and he said, "What is the greatest commandment?" He said, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and all your mind." And he said, "And the second is like that: He's love your neighbors, love yourself." That's a core thing. So okay, that's Jesus was quoting from the Old Testament, but
Right.
that's what he said in the New Testament. So that comes together. That's Judeo-Christian belief.
Right. And if somebody happens to be listening, let's say, who doesn't believe in God or
Right.
identifies as atheist,
Right.
the values that we're talking about are still those commonplace, like kindness,
Yes.
caring for your
Yes.
neighbor, not killing, like being a lawful citizen. It's still something that I think we can all agree on, even if somebody,
Yeah,
is not a
it
believer.
amazed me. They wanted to take the Ten Commandments off the walls of the courthouse, and I said, is it a bad thing to have, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not kill up on the walls of the courthouse? I think it's a good idea, actually.
Right. It's common sense and
Right.
Judeo-Christian values, like you said, they're basically democratic Western ideals and that's something that we are also promoting, when Ricky does our street activities, right? You'll see us not just with Israel flags, but with American flags
Right.
because those Western values that we hold dear in America and we can't take them for granted. We have to actively work to uphold them. We have to
Right.
teach our children how to be kind to each other, how to be empathic, how to learn about others. This is something that we actively need to work on. And I also just want to highlight for those that don't know, Israel shares those same values with
Yes.
America. And that's why it is our democracy in the Middle East. It's the only one. You'll find freedom of expression, freedom of religion, freedom of assembly, all these same rights that we enjoy in America. You can enjoy them in Israel, but the surrounding Arab countries are not the same. You could be killed for speaking out against the government, killed for not, covering up completely if you're a woman, and there's Sharia law in that country. So this is something that we really can't take for granted, and we have to keep fighting for.
Right.
So on that note, tell us about your visits to Israel. Have you traveled there, and what was that experience like for you?
Yes, I've been to Israel 3 times. The first time I went was with Christians United for Israel pastor's trip, and it was amazing. I was just blown away, especially for a pastor and for a pastor's kid who grew up with the scriptures all of his life, the stories of David, stories of Abraham, stories of Moses, all those stories, and then you go and this is where it happened. I mean, it's incredible. And and then I was also blown away by the beauty of the country. It's beautiful. I When I came back from the first time I was there, I said, "Man, I wish I had enough Jewish blood in me that I could move to Israel and was it do Aliyah or whatever."
Yeah.
I wish I could do that. And then I went again that same year. In 2014, they had the war that went on. And so Down in Sturrott and those areas, the stores were all closed. They've been closed for a couple of months. So we decided to go over in solidarity. We took a pastor from every state and we went to Israel. We went up to the Knesset, met with the Knesset. We went down to Sturrott. They opened the stores up for us and we bought from the stores and we ate from the stores. And that was a very short trip, but it was just to show solidarity. Then I went again with our church. We went as a church in 2015. And that was the last time I was there, but I'm going next month to Poland and Israel. And I just can't wait. I would say something about Israel though. A lot of people are afraid to go to Israel. And I know I was never, ever, ever, ever in fear. And even when I was on the border of Sderot, I was down in Ashkelon and those areas. And I was actually one time we went to the Iron Dome and met with the soldiers and interviewed them and talked with them as pastors. And those it was girls that were there. They're in the IDF. And they're like 21, 22, 23. And I'm looking at them there and explaining how this works and what would happen if, the siren went off. But I never once felt fear. And I think it's because of the Judeo-Christian or the culture it reminds me of America. It really does. Just going in a store, talking with people. Uh, but in a beautiful country. So it's a thrill, and I can't wait until next month when I go back again.
I can't wait to hear all about it. And I agree. I felt very safe the three times that I went to Israel. I think I felt safer in Israel than like parts of New York City. I've
Right,
gone to New
right,
York a
right,
lot.
right,
And, there's some streets you wouldn't want to be on at certain
right,
times.
right.
And plus, like in Israel, there's security. Like you said, there
Sure.
might be soldiers who are on duty or off duty
Right,
or are walking around like in their uniform. And, in malls, you'll see like armed security guards, and that's normal. So I personally felt really safe, but I know the media kind of only shows the worst, of course, of what's
exactly.
happening. But they, in general, actually are quite low crime,
Right.
besides, terrorist attacks that may happen. But um, what is one thing you wish people knew about Israel?
Well, I wish they knew the fact that it is such a democratic country, and they don't realize, like you had mentioned, of all the countries around them are not democratic. And let's just say, like it amazes me that a lot of times, and I'm not demeaning in any way, but a lot of times the homosexual community will be against Israel, and they don't realize that in any other country around there they wouldn't be allowed. They would kill them in some countries. And Israel's not that way. Israel is so far from apartheid that people don't even realize it. And if you look up the definition of apartheid and you look what Israel does, they have Arabs in the Knesset, they have Arabs in the IDF, they have Druze in the IDF, they have Christians, everybody's allowed, from the judicial system to their police force. They're just not apartheid at all. And it amazes me that people just don't understand that. Like, it's almost, are you blind? Do you not see what the reality of this is? And so I just wish that people would realize that it's a democratic country. They've been there for, well, I look back and say 4,000 years when Abraham was called, but they've had a presence there for 3,000 years. They still speak the same language, Hebrew. I mean, that's a miracle of God in itself right there. And they've come
Yeah.
back to their land again and again and again. The reason being is because that's their land. And so they're a chosen people. They have a covenant that God made with them. Abraham was known, God said, Abraham is my friend. So if I believe this, if you're not a friend of Israel, you're not a friend of God.
You hit it spot on. And about that apartheid thing, I totally agree. If Jews in Israel were trying to have an apartheid state, why would they let Arabs be their police officers or be the
Exactly.
surgeon, doing their surgery or lead in like the Knesset, which is the Israeli parliament? That makes no logical sense. So all these arguments you can easily deconstruct. Of course, the person has to be willing to listen.
The problem is you and I are preaching to the choir here, you and I. Um, but in our college campuses, they're getting on a daily basis the totally opposite message. And they're at a place of higher learning, but they're not learning higher because they're not studying out the facts. They don't know their history. And you have to look at the Bible because the Bible's one of the greatest books of history to see the history of the Jewish people. And it's just like almost as if when it comes to higher learning and education, like they have blinders over their eyes, they don't want to see. And I do believe this as a pastor, coming from a spiritual point of reference, I do believe that there is a spiritual battle that goes on for Israel.
Yes, I personally believe that as well. So you kind of just answered this, but how can national groups like CUFI, Christians United for Israel, work together with local grassroots groups like RICI to make a difference on this topic?
Uh, we have to do, like there's certain things that come down the pipe from Christians United for Israel that we will promote. And our number one thing is Israel. I mean, we don't get involved in the politics there. We might not agree with the politics there. I have a guy coming to me the other day. He said, I don't like Netanyahu. And I said, you might not like Trump. You might not like Biden, and you might not like President Obama, or you might not like President Clinton or President Reagan. But I still, we still love America, you know? And so I just feel that as a whole, we need to work together for Israel, Israel's sovereignty, Israel's right to defend itself. And I also believe that we need to support them so that they have the military that they need. Not saying our military needs to go, but that they have the support that they need. And then we need to work together for like things like the Taylor Force Act, that anytime they come up, that we are a voice to go to Washington and speak up for that. So I think that's one of the most important things that we can do together as Christians and Jews.
Definitely. And I encourage people to also stay tuned for the Night to Honor Israel if that's something that they would like to join. I think it's usually around the fall, right?
Yes.
You
Yeah.
guys have it.
Yeah.
And if somebody wants to get more involved with Kufi in Rhode Island, how would they go about that? How can they contact you?
Uh, they can contact me, but it's Allen, Allen dot Pangburn, Pangburn at kufi.org, or you can just go on cufi.org and that'll take you to everything. And by the way, they have some great information on there on a daily basis. They do news updates and briefings, even with Netanyahu just meeting with the president and so on and so forth, and what's going on with the negotiations with Iran. That happens daily on that website. So it's a great resource for information if anybody wants that.
Wonderful. And thank you so much, Pastor Allen. Is there anything else that you want to share? Some last thoughts about Israel or about your work?
Well, I pray for the peace of Jerusalem. And if you can go to Summit, with Kufi, it's coming up July 5th through the 7th of this year. And this is the 20th anniversary. And a lot of good things. We're going to have great speakers. You know, Maria, I'm not just, blowing smoke here. They have great speakers. And if you're Jewish, you will feel more than welcome. You almost feel like you're home because it's just such a great time and a great event. And then we'll go up on the hill and take our issues to the senators and congressmen, and our voice means a lot. So just get involved.
Amazing. Thank you
And you do a
so
great job, Maria,
much.
too. I know you're the
Thank
newcomer with Kufi, or Ricky a few years ago, and that's tough because a lot of times when you're your age, because you're young, and I know that the person before you that was the head of it was older, that can be difficult when you're stepping in the shoes of someone that was older. And I had a tour guide tell me in Israel years ago, he said, if you have two Jews, you have three opinions. And so when you're working that's tough for you, but you're doing a great job, Maria.
Thank you so much. And thank you, Pastor Allen, for being like a true supporter of Israel. I truly know that it's altruistic, it's from your heart. You really love Israel. You want to bless the local Jewish community. And I just wish you the best. I'm so happy to see your church, Praise Tabernacle, grow. Every time I'm there, I feel like there's more people than ever before. And again, I feel incredibly welcome and grateful to partner with you on this work of promoting Israel in Rhode Island, of educating about Israel, dispelling some of those myths and misinformation with the conversations that we have, and also working together with Kufi, Ricky and Kufi. I think we can get a lot accomplished. So thank you again, Pastor Allen, and Am Israel. Hi.
Shalom.